It is time for another professional match of StarCraft 2. What I got for you today is a Protoss versus Terran played on Overgrowth LE between two amazing players for their respective races. Spawning in the top right corner with the red Terran pieces, the current world champion of StarCraft 2, we have none other than ByuN. And his opponent, with the blue colors, playing with the blue probes right now, it is going to be none other than the Protoss player known as Classic. Now, I don't really think that ByuN needs any introduction at this point in time. He did, by the way, go for an early gas. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I've made many videos on ByuN's playstyle before. He's an extremely enjoyable Terran player to watch, as in particular his control is top-notch. And like I said, he is the current world champion of StarCraft 2. This guy has nothing left to prove, but he is still dominating the scene with superb Terran play. Classic, however, may be a little bit less well-known, although maybe that is not completely fair to say. I just feel like he isn't getting as many props as he may be deserving. He's won an IEM, but more importantly in Korea, he's won an SSL, he's won a GSL, and he basically won all of the premier tournaments that there are to win, and this guy is extremely good. He won roughly $183,000 in prize money, but for some odd reason, I don't hear too many people talk about him, even though he's always been performing very well. Maybe that's just me though, but regardless, we do indeed see that quick Nexus follow-up after only having a single probe in that gas geyser, so we'll see what Classic has planned for the majority of this game, because indeed he does add on the second one, and I wouldn't be surprised if he starts mining with a third probe here very shortly after. However, we did indeed see that quick gas geyser here from ByuN. That does mean that he can be going for a quick factory, although in this particular match he does decide to open up with a Reaper first, one of ByuN's most typical units, but he does indeed have 100 gas available once again at this point, so this SCV indeed is looking to start up that factory, and ByuN is opening up with a relatively standard build where he can of course go for both Marines, but then also switch into the siege tank, and that is one of the most terrifying units right now for Protoss players to deal with, as they recently got a buff, and in particular to armored units that deal a heck of a lot of damage, and it turns out that pretty much most of the Protoss units are armored. Anyhow, regardless, on the other side of the map, that Reaper is currently moving across the map, trying to chase down that single probe that was scouting earlier. But of course, there will be a mothership core as well as a adept right here available to greet him. Let's see how much damage he can do. This first probe may very well end up falling. Mothership core is, however, already available and is going to try and shoot this guy away. Although, ooh, cheeky little loop around there. Look at that. That Mothership core not responding here in time, and look at this. This could be absolutely incredible for him. Getting a second probe right there as well. That is not what you want as a Protoss player. That sneaky little loop around doesn't quite get the third one just yet, although he's looking like he's still going to try and pressure more and more. One of the probes out of the gas, and actually, whoa, he ends up getting the fourth probe right there as well. That is ByuN. I just said it, right? Didn't I just say it? That his freaking control is top notch. He just got 4 probes out of a single Reaper when he thought it was only gonna maybe get 1, and not even that. I mean, the cheeky little loop around right there, out of sight of the Mothership core vision, or at the very least without his opponent responding, that worked out like a charm. But anyways, looks like we see the follow-up right here from Classic. He's gonna go for that starport play, and of course he is still building his adepts. He's got 2 across the map already, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we do indeed see 2 of those. He's gonna be able to pressure his opponent with that with that in just a little bit, and he's probably gonna try and join up with this third one as well, so he can start one-shotting the SCVs. In the meantime, ByuN is not sitting still himself either. He's getting himself a factory right now with that tech lab after building a single Widow Mine. And indeed, we do see that single Widow Mine with the 6 Marine drop making its way to the other side of the map. Of course, it does depend on what units Classic decides to build out of this Stargate. And it looks like it's actually going to be a Phoenix. So he will be able to lift up the Widow Mine before it can burrow if he is extremely quick. But regardless, the Adepts have made their way across the map, and here the damage will be dealt. Of course, this is a very scary scenario here for the Protoss player. 2 SCVs already end up falling, and he could get a lot more with proper control. Here we go. He does get the shades into the main base. At the same time, the Widow Mine does indeed get boosted up right there. Beautiful play, actually, going for the photon overcharge. And at the same time, both of the Adepts end up falling with only 2 SCVs. Once again, that was probably some insane repair micro there as well from ByuN, keeping all of these SCVs alive, making sure that they couldn't get killed. And I would say that definitely is solid defense here as well, though, for Classic. So basically what you do is you use the Phoenix to lift up the Widow Mine before it can burrow, and then you use the photon overcharge to shoot it out of the skies, which is a really cheeky way of being able to deal with Widow Mines without actually needing detection. Of course, if it would have burrowed, it could have been a huge pain. But regardless, Classic has made its way to this stage in the game, and he's going to be able to get himself a third command center at this point in time as well. ByuN, in the meantime, has followed it up right here with a siege tank, and he does indeed have that engineering bay here at the front as well. We don't see the third base just yet, by the way. It looks like he's just going to try and really secure this position here first before getting a whole lot else. But here the Phoenixes are already hanging out at the potential fourth base location for the Terran player. But of course, they're trying to just simply pick up any dropships that they can. Of course, a few of these adepts, once again, making their way across the map. We don't see any upgrades on those just yet, but of course, they're still very helpful at sniping all of these SCVs, as they will be able to 3-shot workers, and obviously it takes 3 shots to kill a single SCV, to try and get some damage in here as well. Looks like the adepts are going to try and push into the front, while all of the Reaper, or rather all of the Phoenixes, have made their way into the main base to try and pick up whatever unit they can. And actually, that siege tank, though, in the back in a perfect position, getting that depot up in a perfect timed SCV as well, and eventually that Widow Mine ends up picking up 4 kills as well. So spot on defense here by ByuN, really outplaying his opponent here in the earlier stages of the game. And while his Widow Mine pressure really didn't do a whole lot, he is showing what he's capable of, because while this is all going on, neither of these players is really flooding any kind of resources. And while the supply counts are still relatively even, and of course there is a lack of third command center right now for the Terran, this is still looking extremely solid for him, just simply not missing a beat so far. Very, very, very nicely done. Of course, Classic is not out of this game by any stretch of the imagination just yet. In particular, once he gets that third base up and running, that could give him a huge economy lead. And on top of that, he's actually starting up his production right now as well, getting 3 more gateways, going for that robotics facility, so really trying to get as much as possible. And these Phoenixes have definitely been paying for themselves as well. Look at all of that. You get so many pickups, and without actually any kind of there we go, so many SCV, or so many Marines end up falling. That's crazy. But without, you know, a missile turret in the mineral line, these SCVs are still definitely vulnerable as well. But hold that thought, because ByuN is trying to make its way across the map. He is not aware of this third base just yet, but he can almost smell it at this point, because he's one of the best Terrans in the world, and he's going to try his very best to try and do some damage to this play as well. Of course, you got to be very careful. Siege tanks are very difficult to try and get in a proper position, because the Phoenixes will be able to pick it up with relative ease. But look at that range. It's going to be shooting away at all of those pylons, and of course, with the photon overcharge energy being spent right here, that does mean that he needs to be extremely careful. And wow, actually, the mothership core ends up falling, which is extremely painful. All of the adepts, though, shading forward, trying to get whatever damage they can, and there we do indeed see the last second turnaround. Phoenixes do come back around as well to try and pick up that siege tank, and it looks like there may very well be enough units, even after not having the photon overcharge available, to deal some additional damage here, although it looks like that the Liberators have made their way across the map as well. Solid defense, though, there from Classic, only losing a single pylon there, as well as some of his adepts, and of course the mothership core. Don't think he had to lose the mothership core right there, but regardless, he is still producing more and more units, and with all of that, you know, additional production that we saw him add on just a minute or so ago, this is looking really solid for him, as there are a ton of Terran units right here to get picked off. And look at that, the Liberators, of course, in their anti-ground mode, fighting outside of that liberation zone, and eventually these Phoenixes are going to be able to deal with all of these units just fine. However, all of the Terran reinforcements have indeed arrived on the other side of the map. There are Widow Mines in this party. Of course, the splash damage can be absolutely terrifying, and while this is all going on, ByuN is securing himself a third base as well, so he's by no means going all in with this pressure whatsoever. Although this is a scary moment, of course, these Widow Mines can do a ton of damage. They do indeed get picked up there in the nick of time, using that observer to try and get maximum vision of them right there, and eventually, wow, all of that army gets cleaned up. Basically, what he tried to do is lift up all of the Widow Mines so they wouldn't be able to shoot at all, as once you burrow, or once you lift them up and you drop them again, they're gonna be unburrowed, which is an insanely difficult move to do here, and Classic is showing that basically to the best of his abilities. If he can pick up that SCV as well, wow, that would be awesome, because right now, that command center is not able to lift, and it's gonna be under a ton of pressure. While there are definitely a solid amount of Protoss units here across the map, and the Terran does have their defenses, they are out of position, and I wouldn't be surprised if this third is gonna end up being forced to get cancelled. I mean, yeah, indeed, wow. Picking up that last second SCV, though, was really very important, and with that observer perfectly in place as well to spot any kind of Widow Mines. I mean, he's constantly moving those around. He's really securing himself a super nice economy lead. Beautiful play here by Classic after securing himself that third base. He may have missed a couple of sloppy moments here in the earlier stages of the game, but his Phoenix control, as well as his Adept control, has been absolutely absolutely on point throughout this game. And the economy lead is really what you're looking for as a Protoss player. It basically means that the longer this game goes on, the more economy and the more income he will be getting as well, because the main bases will start running low very shortly here for Terrans, as of course those mules do mine rather quickly, but once, you know, they've been mining for a little while, the mineral patches will start disappearing, and really all that Classic has to do now is make sure that he doesn't lose any kind of significant amount of workers, but more importantly, prevent his opponent from getting a huge economy themselves. And you can really just simply wait for the Terran to move out as a Protoss, because you know he's gonna run low very shortly and he's gonna have to move over. I wouldn't be surprised if ByuN is gonna try and lift up his main command center and, for example, lift it over there instead. While we do see indeed that third command center being added on right now as well, he's probably going to try and double expand very shortly. But regardless, look at the amount of units right now that there are already for the Protoss. It's 160-ish supply up against 130. Which is definitely very nice. And Classic constantly looking around with the Phoenixes to pick up any kind of dropships. And really, that is what ByuN is so very well known for. Like, he can come back in those kind of scenarios. I love this move here from Classic, though. Not taking any main risks. I mean, he's just simply sitting back, making sure that he gets that economy lead. And, you know, playing it safe and sound. Not pushing into this aggression. Because Liberators and Siege Tanks and Widow Mines can absolutely murder you as a Protoss player. But regardless, he's just simply sitting there, waiting for his opponent to make their move. And he's going to try and counter that instead. At the very least, I don't think he just simply wants to allow ByuN to get that third base up and running. Of course, as far as the upgrades go, we do see Blink just about to finish up. A Dark Shrine edition now as well. Double Fort is researching here. And actually an Oracle now as well. So he can probably set up some Stasis Wards and potentially start up some more harass if he decides to do so. Pretty insane game though so far. Of course, this isn't game over for ByuN by any stretch just yet. While he is behind in supply, as we already saw, his control is superb and he definitely could get some good splash hits off with those Widow Mines as well. A few Archons have joined this fight now that they can indeed be morphed in as well, but a little bit risky there though. There aren't that many Widow Mines here at the front, and indeed the ones that were at the third base are forced to be moved back as well, but the Shade does end up getting cancelled, so it looks like Protoss is not gonna commit just yet, although it looks like he's looking for some sort of opener here. The Widow Mines, of course, are trying to connect with as many of those gateway units as they possibly can, and there the stim forward does indeed get a couple of the units as well. Beautiful Liberator positioning here, slowly but surely Protoss, or forcing the Protoss to get out of that position they were at previously, and that Oracle immediately got shut down. Trying to kite back here, making sure that all of those Protoss units are gonna be inside of that anti-ground liberation zone for ByuN, and even though this army supply here for Classic looked really solid and he's still ahead in the army supply, slowly but surely he is being forced back. However, a little bit of an overextension there, more than likely here from the Terran player. The army of Protoss is looking absolutely menacing, and while a lot of the Liberators did do that damage, he's trying to bait all of the Protoss units on top of those Widow Mines. However, Classic is not falling for it. While he is, you know, getting a bunch of damage done with the Liberators, all of them do get picked up, and there we do indeed see the lift-ups on those Widow Mines as well, completely getting rid of all of the splash damage from this Terran army, and slowly but surely the Protoss is progressing onwards, still not taking any risks though, still making sure that he get maximum value out of this army, and really, like, not allowing himself to be caught with his pants down. He knows very well that his opponent has, you know, insane control, and it could definitely backfire if he overextends for just a little bit, because even though he's about 50 supply ahead, this is definitely still anyone's games, as with one little misstep into a minefield, things go absolutely south really very quickly. Of course, that command center from the main base is trying to lift over right now. The gold base is being secured in the meantime as well here for Classic. Storm is not available just yet. I wouldn't be surprised if you see that in just a little bit. And the first Ghost will be produced here as well for that EMP, so they can get rid of all of these Archons, but more importantly, any of the spellcasters. And indeed, that does include the Phoenix as well. War Prism, however, is here as well. This is a little bit tricky. It is, I was gonna say, it is moving a little too far forward, but there are a ton of Protoss units here, and it looks like he's not done just yet. Here we go, once again, massive fight forward, trying to bait all of these units backwards. Of course, beautiful moves going down. The EMP shutting down the shields of a significant chunk of these units. Once again, those Widow Mines trying to connect with as many of the Protoss units, but Classic is not having it. He's trying to micro back outside of that range to the best of his abilities, and slowly but surely he's whittling away all of those Terran units. He knows very well that the main base will be running very low on resources here very shortly, and as long as he contains the Protoss, he's gonna be in an A, or as long as he manages to contain the Terran player rather, he's gonna be in an A-okay position, because he still has got so many bases himself as well. Still playing it extremely safe though, still a little bit careful here as well. Obviously he doesn't want to allow the Terran to get the sickest economy here either, but there we do see the Adepts on the other end of the map. They're gonna be able to kill those SCVs with relative ease now that they've got a bunch of upgrades, as well as the you know, just the simple attack speed increase right there. And eventually it looks like Classic is gonna be able to make its way up to the ramp. Shading forward here. Is he gonna commit though? That is the real question. He may very well try to do so. Does indeed decide to cancel the shade there in the last second. EMP does once again end up taking out a significant portion there of these Protoss units, as they do indeed all end up losing their shields. But look at the amount of Protoss that is here right now. Beautiful move. Blinking forward, trying to shut down as many of these Terran units as possible. Of course, these Immortals dealing bonus damage to all of those armored units, and eventually Classic manages to obtain the victory. Beautiful game there, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well, so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. And while you're at it, you can of course follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Links are down below in the description. I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.